The next step after we've created our class is to actually use it. Let's do something with it. Let's create instances of it. So our class, again, is our template of what a class looks like. We think back to our person class. We have these attributes of a person that we expect a person to have or to be, things that they can do would be the methods. Or if we think about a car, that could be a class. What can a car do? Well, it can drive. What are some attributes of a car? Maybe the color, maybe the brand. So we have our car class. Well, how do we use it? Let's create some cars. That's what we've done down here. And all we need to do, very simple, create a variable, whatever we'd like to name it. Here we have car1. We assign that variable to our class, car, uppercase, or capital car, same name as our class. That must happen for this to work. We're linking this variable to the class. And then we just input whatever arguments we need as part of our init method. And we'll get more into the init method, I promise. Not quite yet, but I want to give you a little bit more baseline before we do that. So here we have color and brand. Ignore self for now. But we need to input our arguments for color and brand. Everything besides self. So we're pretending that's not there for this purpose. So we need to input red. That's our first attribute. That's color. And Toyota, that's brand. So color will be red. Brand will be Toyota. So now we've instantiated an object. We now have car1. That is an object of type car. Just as we've learned previously, the type, when we use type on a string, for example, it tells us its type is a string. Or if we use the type method, I'll show you that here in a minute. Type of int is int. Type of a list is a list. Type of car1 is car, and I'll show you that. We could create another instance. We could create so many of these. We could create many cars. We have car2. We're saying this is a green Honda. And then if we want to call the method, the drive method of our car, we can just say car1 dot drive with the parentheses to call that method. Just as we would do with a string class, we could say string. If we have a string variable, myString dot to invoke one of the methods, dot lower or dot upper, or list dot append. We're calling the append method on a list. So those are some examples. So this is what we're going to be doing now in VS Code with the classes that we created in our last lecture. So here we have our rectangle class. So let's say small rectangle. And what we need to input is the height and the width. Remember, we don't need to worry about self for now. We don't have to put an argument in for that. So let's say it's got a height of 5 and a width of 10. And now what we need to do, whoops, I totally did that a little bit out of order. Small rectangles are variable of class rectangle. There we go. That should make more sense to you now, and that will get rid of my errors. So small rectangles are variable. Now if we say rectangle 510, it will create a new class. Let's run this. Nothing's going to happen here that we can see. See, we ran it. There's no output. But what if we call small rectangle dot get area? We see we have this get area method that we can call now. Dot get area. Now let's run it. Area is 50. So there we go. we've just created an object of type rectangle, and we've called one of its methods, just as we've done for string or integer or list, dictionary, etc. Let's print the type of small rectangle now. Its class is rectangle class. Just as if we had a string, my string equals hello. Type of my string. Whoops, print type of my string. I'm only human, guys. There we go. Class string. It's the string class. Okay, so that's our rectangle. What we could also do, we could create a method to modify our rectangle now that we know how to use it, and then we'll show some examples with bank account and animal to solidify these concepts. Let's say resize. Always put in self, and then let's put in our height and width again. So we'll say self. We'll just do the same thing. Self.height equals height. Self.width equals width. So we're changing, and remember, self represents our actual object variables. We'll get a little bit more into that. I do apologize. I know there's a few unknowns here, but I think this order of operations is possibly the best way to learn this. So we could resize our rectangle. So we're saying get area of the rectangle. Let's say small rectangle. And you're seeing the limitations of our name. What if we want to make this a large rectangle, which we will? Let's make it 100 by 100. Okay, and then let's get the area. So let's run that. Now the area, so the area was 50. Now the area is 10,000 as output from this. Okay, so that's an example with our rectangle. We could call, we could make another method to get the perimeter. Get perimeter. Self, and then we don't need to input anything else. Let's return this time instead of just print. Return 2 times height plus 2 times width. Oh, and we need to do self.width and self.height. That's why it was throwing an error, because we want to actually reference the small rectangle, the instance. So let's create a variable. So let's say perimeter equals small rectangle dot get perimeter. And then let's print perimeter. I'm just doing this a few different ways, by returning or by printing, or another method that doesn't return or print anything. It just changes the values, just to show you some examples. So let's run this. Well, let's print, make it a little more human readable. Perimeter is perimeter. Okay. Perimeter is 400. All right. So let's move on to bank account. And we're just solidifying these concepts. Let's add one more method. Let's say, well, let's add 2 methods. Let's deposit self, and then amount. Change self.balance, this variable up here. It's a value of our instance. Self.balance plus equals amount. And let's do withdraw self and then amount. Self.balance minus equals amount. And we'll just say they can go negative for now. So self.balance equals self.balance minus the amount. Now let's instantiate this, an object. Let's say mom's account equals bank account, the name of our class. And we need to give it an account holder and a balance. We'll say mom, and let's start with $100 or 100, whatever your currency is, 100 of that. That may be a lot, that may be very much not a lot. So let's do some things to mom's account. Let's say mom's account dot, let's print mom's account is owned by mom's account dot, account holder. So we can access these attributes this way. We're just slowly learning bit by bit more and more about our classes, guys. So we can access these values of the class directly. Mom's account is owned by mom. So we just did mom's account, this class, dot, to access the account holder variable. Mom's account is owned by mom. Now let's say mom's account dot get balance. We'll print the balance, and then let's deposit 100 more. Let's print it again. Let's withdraw. Let's withdraw everything. We're greedy. And then let's get the balance again. So we should end with 0. So let's try that. Oh, but we're not actually printing this value. How about every time because we did return, I'm going to make this a little bit easier. We could add print statements down here if we wanted, but I'm just going to print self.balance. Now let's run it. Okay. So we got the balance. First we printed mom's account is owned by mom. We got the balance, which initially, when we created the account, was 100. This mom's account had 100 in it. We could create another instance, and we could say dad's account. We would just do the same thing. Dad's account equals bank account, but dad, and we'd have a different instance, a different object. We could do different things to this object with its own values, independent of mom's account. We're going to delete dad's account for now. But here, moving on, we got the balance, which was 100. We deposited 100 and then got the balance, so that made it 200. And then we withdrew 200, got the balance, that made it 0. So some more exercises with bank account. Now let's do one final example of animal. And I'm not going to add any methods here, but let's just instantiate an animal. Let's say cat equals animal. Again, the name of the class. And we need to input our values, our variables required from the init method to initiate the object. So type and sound. We'll say type is cat, sound is meow. Now if we want to, let's say cat dot get animal details, we should print that all out. There we go. Cat makes this sound, meow, just as we had described there. So you guys, that's several examples of creating classes and then using them. And we can start to see how powerful this is, how easily extensible this is. We could create different instances of these classes. And And it takes very little code. We just have to understand how to do it. So those are the basics that I wanted to show you for this video. And we'll continue learning about classes in the next video. See you there.